how do I get there? And that's when it became this deep interest in real estate. And I thought, if I get a real estate license, there's brokers out there that I know clear over $1 million. I can get a real estate license. You don't have to have a college degree, and sky's the limit. You can just sell and sell, and I'm willing to work hard. So I took the little money I had, I saved up, and paid for real estate classes and got a license. And then I remember my uncle was offering me a partnership and said, hey.
This is the Subway uncle?
Subway uncle said, hey. And he just kept growing. He kept buying. He was at
Subways?
9, 10, other fast food chains. He was doing really well for himself and said, hey, I got this store that needs to be turned around. I'd love you to be a partner over there. And it was a tough thing to say because it was a good opportunity, and I've always wanted to own a business.
What did you do? Did you turn him down?
I turned him down. I said,
wow.
I want to do this real estate thing. I went to school for it. You know,
I feel like it was the $1 million goal turning him down.
It was my investment. That partly could have been true. Partly was. And I think I built a plan and wanted to stick to that plan. So I did it. And I remember it was tough because just still that money, and you're starting a new career. So I remember moving back into my parents' house and just to kick that off, because when you start in real estate, I got into Baird & Warner, and they don't have a base salary. You go out and sell, and you keep half your commission, and that's their model. And it was a great platform. It was a large office. They had a great infrastructure and team to back you up and help support you. But I remember that first day after you're done doing their training at the corporate office, but you're at a desk with a phone, and that's pretty much it. They tell you, go call your Rolodex and see if you can go sell some houses.
This feels a little bit like Glengarry Glen Ross. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
It's the phone in the desk, baby.
There you go. Here's a phone book. Go call.
Have you ever seen that movie, Glengarry Glen Ross?
No, I haven't.
A, B, C.
Oh, always be closing.
Hey, he knows it.
Yeah.
Yo, man.
Oh, yeah. The third prize is you're fired. I always like that one.
Good memory.
Yeah.
Cadillacs and steak knives. All right. So, yeah, I think the $1 million goal starts to really change the way you look at opportunities. You're like, if this can't get me closer to $1 million within 5 years, I'm not really interested. Sorry, uncle. I think that's kind of what was happening probably. Yeah. So, did you start knocking some balls out of the park in the real estate world?
No, I couldn't sell houses. I don't think.
Shit, it didn't work.
6 months, I didn't sell a single house.
Get out of here.
I was living at home with my parents. I was working part-time at Subway for another family friend. And I remember making sandwiches and even, hey, by the way, if you're looking to buy or rent, here's my card. And it was tough. I didn't like the sale.
That was a whole different upsell. Chips and drink for $1.50? Yeah. Cookie? Yeah. You want a house?
There's a backstory. I actually got my first listing that way. I met a guy who had a Rosati's pizza shop.
Oh, yeah.
And said, you know what? I'll let you sell my pizza shop. Little did I know.
Not his house, his pizza shop.
Pizza shop.
Wait, that's your first business brokerage right there.
Yeah, I was always interested in business. I didn't like selling houses because it's a very emotional sale. And it's tough. People don't want to buy houses from a 21-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's true.
They don't. Even my own family members. My cousins would buy a house from some other agent. I'm like,
what are you doing?
I'm right here. Yeah. What's going on?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It requires a lot of, especially higher price houses, a lot of confidence. I mean, even if lower price, $100,000 house, $200,000 house, if you're taking a mortgage out for $150,000, $175,000, $200,000, and you don't make that much money, that's fucking scary. And I don't want a 21-year-old kid telling me, you'll be fine.
First-time home buyer. You don't want a first-time realtor. And I met a guy at that office. It was a great office. And there was one guy that sold commercial real estate. So I made a point to hang out with him, chat, and get some motivation and learn a little bit of how that side of the business works. And it allowed me to explore the areas I was really interested in, was more on the business side. I like the numbers.
Did you sell that Rosati's pizza by chance?
I didn't.
But you got the listing.
I got the listing. I marketed it, and it got me going. It was the experience of learning how the process goes to list a business. It basically got me the job because I came across this company that a family friend introduced me to, and it was a small little shop, and they technically weren't M&A advisory. They're more of a business brokerage shop, but they would sell anything. They would sell some manufacturing companies. They were very agnostic on what they would sell, which is why you think of it more as a business brokerage company. Usually when you're doing M&A advisory, you're very much focused on sector specific and developing some domain expertise. But they didn't care. They would sell whatever it is, nail salons, hair salons.
You jumped in there, you started working there and started taking listings for businesses, and your goal was to sell businesses.
It was. They hired me because they wanted the young Indian kid to go sell some Subway franchises and convenience stores.
Okay.
And I did. I excelled at sitting down with a prospective buyer and helping them understand a P&L and look at how much money this business actually makes and where the value add opportunities are.
Nice. This is cool, dude. This is like business 101. This is like investment banking 101. It's at its most basic fundamental level.
It's a good place to start because
fantastic.
You look at a small retail business and their P&Ls, and if you learn that and the fundamental understanding of it, and I remember the one thing that helped me the most, and I still do this today, even when I make my own models, I take that P&L and just throw it in a pie chart.
Into a pie chart?
Just in a pie chart.
Yeah.
And it just helps
33% labor cost, 33% retail, food cost.
And when you're comparing businesses, it just helps you really look at things like, wait a minute, that slice is way too big. What's up with that? And start digging into it.
And you'll be able to see which have higher margin businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. You understand their margins easier.
Do you remember from your experience which businesses had the highest margin?
So that was another story. I got obsessed with it because you're in this business brokerage role, right? And you have access to databases, you know the game, you know how to get all this data to look at companies. And it becomes this obsession because you're like, I still in my blood want to own my own business. But what is the best business to own? Like out of the... And you don't realize like what we are exposed to day to day, we see thousands of businesses, but the reality, there's millions of different kinds of businesses out there, right? And it was interesting. It was like the service that picks up those red hazard bags from any medical clinic. They make a ton of money.
No shit.
All these veterinarians make a ton of money. We don't think about the veterinarian. The funeral homes, those typical funeral homes make $300,000-$400,000. They typically own their property.
Crazy.
Great profitable business. So there's all these little things, and it became this obsession of learning. And it was great because I see these listings, opportunities. I just pretended I had buyers and just started calling them up saying, yeah, I got some buyers that are interested. Give me some more information. I learned
Wait. This is the most gangster move I've ever heard. I mean, not most, but this is pretty good. So you'd just call up a funeral home or a nail salon or something and be like, hey, I've got a buyer interested in buying a business. Are you interested in selling your business?
So early, that's part of it. We're learning how to source those deals for companies that you want to sell. Early on, just to get my feet wet, it's looking online because there's a bunch of websites where other brokers, advisors, or marketing businesses. I would call them those first because they're already in a marketing process, so they'll have data prepared and financials that you can review.
You as a business broker would call other business brokers?
Right. And they're marketing a business, and I'll call and just say, hey, I got a buyer. Let me sign the NDA and get the information and learn about this company.
No shit.
Right? So then that was their easy foot in. I mean, when you...
What would you do when you got that?
Learn. You just learn, like, this is cool. How does this business work? What's the profitability around it? What are their EBITDA margins? How has the growth been over the years? How many employees do they have? Like, how complex is this business? I remember talking to the guy that was in charge of Mercedes-Benz development in North America, and just having the conversation with them, and just, we're interested in opening a Mercedes-Benz dealership.
You said that?
What is it? Yeah, what does it require? And he walked me through and explained it. It was interesting. I mean, I've always taken that approach, even as I grew through the career. And at a point, I was interested in getting into private equity and starting a fund. And lo and behold, there's people in pension funds even that'll spend the time with you and teach you how those private funds work, how they invest in them, who are the key players, the advisors they work with.
Right.
So, all right. Curiosity.
So yeah, that's powerful curiosity. That's so valuable, dude. Especially when you have a goal of making $1 million, you'll start calling anyone and everyone. All right. So wait, but we haven't really gotten to like when the cash register started to ring for you. Yeah, you want some water?
I got some more. I'm going to try your tea.
Yeah, let's do it. You want one of these cups?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
All right. So when did the cash register start ringing for you? Meaning, like, you closed your first deal. I know it wasn't Rosati's, but you closed your first deal, and then it, there you go. the register starts to ring more and more, and you're starting to sell more and more businesses. I presume this is the path that's bringing you into becoming an M&A pro.
Right. There's you understand where you're getting your wins, and you start thinking about where your opportunities are to grow and move forward. And at the time, the guys I worked with put me in that space and said, "Why don't you sell these little assets?" And I did it and picked up and thought, "Okay, this is cool, but this firm doesn't have a clear-cut strategy. We should really be focusing." And that's why after a year, I thought I can do this on my own. And what I want to do is build a practice and just focus on gas stations. Because when you sell a convenience store, they're small. They're $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 transactions. But these gas stations that you're familiar with,
they include real estate.
You often have the property. Now you're talking about a $1 to $3 million transaction. It's actually a sound investment too. Same thing. You have the property, you get a mortgage, you amortize that, you're building equity up, and maybe even make a model out of just leasing the convenience store part of it out. There's a lot of things you can play around with. You got more room to play with the financing, do different things, refinance it depending on how things are. Whereas the little business loans are harder to deal with.
Right.
Dealing with SBA is a pain in the ass. So.
Yep, totally. So you pivoted. And did you start doing that on your own or with a business broker?
No, I left. I just started from scratch on my own.
No shit.
Started Transatlantic Investments Advisory.
Transatlantic Investments Advisory.
Yep.
That was your company you started.
Yep.
All right. So you started that company. Do you start picking up the phone and being like, "Hey, I got a buyer for your gas station"?
Yeah. What was it? It was the first thing I did. The thing we were good at was marketing the stuff online. I think that was the thing. There's a lot of the old school folks out there that had the very traditional way offline.
Yep.
And we were just good at putting stuff online, which started building the contacts out quickly.
Right. People start calling you. Your phone starts ringing.
Because anytime you get one asset to sell, people call in on it, and then you just keep that relationship and say, "Hey, let me find things for you." The career evolved. In banking, you usually focus on selling assets because that's where the money's at, right?
Yep. You get 1%, 2%.
At some point, somebody's bound to buy it. And depending on the size, right, you get a slice out of it, or how big of a slice. But and that model works because somebody's going to buy that asset at some point in time. We lower the price till somebody buys it, or whatever it be. You let it sit for 6 months, a year, somebody will buy it. On the buy side, and that's where I ended up evolving towards, because I really, really loved working on the buy side.
Meaning having some kind of a fund, potentially like private equity, where you have $1 million, $5 million, $100 million, and you go out and you just start buying assets.
I started doing that.
Is that what you're talking about?
I did gas stations for a year and a half, and I got burnt out.
Selling them?
Mostly selling.
Yeah.
So the first year did great, like sold 8 assets.
Wow. 8 gas stations.
Same thing, struggled. I started the practice with $10,000 and thought this is all I needed. Didn't understand goodwill and that you need some running capital to go with.
Totally.
And was on the verge of losing everything and ended up getting a portfolio of gas stations to sell in Indiana.
Oh, really? Nice.
It was a distressed asset. The bank owned it and ended up just doing auction sales on all of it. Then jump started the career and kept that role going.
You were able to make some money off selling each of those properties.
Yeah.
Nice.
It worked out. I think one of them I sold twice. We sold it to a guy.
Sold it again later.
I remember I kept trying to get family to buy it. I'm like, guys, this is such a good deal. It was only $210,000 for gas station, car wash, full property, some rentals included. This is such a no-brainer deal.
What was it worth? Probably $500,000 or $700,000?
I ended up selling it to a guy at $240,000, took $30,000 on it, and then 3 months later sold it for $550,000 and took $50,000 off of it.
3 months?
3 months. And the guy was a brilliant guy, just knew how to turn the business around, renegotiated all his rebates with the vendors and contracts and distributors, everything, just turned it around quickly. And I sold it to a doctor. The doctor, I had an offer at $1.1 million for it, but he didn't want to sell. And then I think his kid's like,
oh, that was the third. That would have been the third.
It would have been the third. But
at 1.1.
Yeah, he didn't want to sell. That was about a year later. So
holy smokes! Look at the numbers on that shit. It starts at 240, then sold at 240, then 540, then almost at 1.1 million.
Yeah. So transaction price 240, 550. Could have been 1.1.
Could have been 1.1. That's huge in a matter of a year or two, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you knock off some deals in that first year, especially through the bank-owned one, the distressed asset. But then do you leave the gas station world and
I
start?
got tired of it. I remember one time I had a client call me at like midnight. He's like, "What are you doing to sell my gas station?" And I was like, "Well,
Leave
fuck,
me alone.
I'm trying to sleep so I can sell it tomorrow." For me, I grew up around that motel business. So to progress in motels, like hotels, I thought it would be so cool to sell like really nice hotels.
Right.
And so I that's more of a pivot towards selling the hotel assets. But it was, again, started from the bottom, selling the small, like little private independents, and then the comfort inns, the sleep inns, and they're small. They're $1 million to up to $5 million assets. And then
Still on the sell side.
still selling, but that's when it started shifting over towards buy side, particularly when I started working with the chains like Kimpton, Extended Stay America, La Quinta. And when working with those chains, it was very little about sell side because they would go with the brand brokers for sell side stuff. It was more about buy side that, hey, the brokers don't want to do buy side work. And those guys all wanted to keep selling the assets. And that's where I started getting my feet wet working with. I had a good client that was a developer, developing hotel assets. So I ended up working with him to acquire properties that could be converted into hotels.
Oh, okay. So you would get a loan in this case in order to purchase a Comfort Inn or a La Quinta Inn or something like that, and then develop it further?
Well, I'd work with a client. So I'd find a particular private, usually private.
Oh, I see. You're the client. Now, you're not the buyer. Okay. You're just on the buy side. I got you.
Yeah, I'm still, and at this time, I'm probably 25, 26 years old. I'm still young, but learning a lot. Working with these clients probably been great inspiration, but educational. Especially when you get a good client that's very transparent on their strategy and what they're doing. You learned a lot about finance, how they structure things.
I saw a lot of this myself at JP Morgan, but not at the level you were seeing it. I was seeing it on the finance side. I would work and do derivative transactions. I would see it when my clients, let's say US Bank, Comerica Bank, all these smaller regional banks, Key Bank, would come in and be like, yo, we have a $2 million loan we need to do a swap on the back of. Or we have a $5 million loan. And I would always ask the treasurer, whoever I was talking to, I'm like, yo, what is this loan you guys are making? And they would explain to me, oh, this is a La Quinta Inn in, Ohio.
Yep.
Someone wants to buy a La Quinta Inn, so we've agreed to lend them the money for it. I'm like, no shit. So I was seeing it from a distance. You were right. You were in the trenches. I was several feet back.
I
would always wonder what you were trying. All the shit you were curious about or learning that you would actually learn. I was super curious about, but I didn't really learn it too much.
I could think back and just vividly really associate the private investors being with the most difficult people to work with, and companies were much easier. The companies, they tend to
on the buy side.
On buy side, either way, buy or selling. If you're working with a private investor,
super emotional.
It's not emotional. It's just you got a very much higher likeliness or probability of getting fucked over. Does that make sense?
Why wouldn't a company get screwed over? Less resources?
They know there's recourse, right? Because why not sue the company? You know they got the money, the P&L. The private guy, and that was the challenge. It's just you're watching out for other brokers trying to come under you or break terms on some of your agreements.
I'm not following. So you're saying if a private, let's say I as a private guy came to Kison back then, I said, yo, I want to buy that Comfort Inn for $5 million. You're saying the private guy who wants to buy the La Quinta Inn or Comfort Inn for $5 million, he's way harder to work with than if a company wanted to buy that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean,
why is that? Because I would be worried about recourse?
Yeah, you're not for you to kind of know the game a little better in terms of, hey, maybe I don't want to pay this guy at some point.
Oh yeah, I may want to stop making my payments on the $5 million.
I know we got a fee agreement in place, but you know what? I changed my mind. I'm just not going to pay.
Is this for the business broker you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, where does it evolve into M&A advisory? Because at some points you're working on a $100 million transaction. Because the hotel's evolved into selling banks. Where with a partner, I used to do fundraising and actually sell banks. And it depends on the situation, right?
Selling banks? What do you mean selling banks?
Like you think of the community banks. Community banks are typically owned by
The community.
Right?
Oh, so
Private
you're saying you would get involved in deals where the bank itself is getting sold.
Correct.
Ah.
So, and a lot of it wasn't pure M&A. A lot of times it was just raising capital. They might have reached their lending limit and they need to increase their
Reserves.
investor base,
Yeah.
so they can continue,
More equity will allow them to lend more.
right? Because they,
And so you'd get involved in that?
oh yeah,
Okay, you'd help fundraise
fundraise and sell.
and then sell it, right? Okay, and so that's moving on. That's when you start moving into more M&A. So did you well, hold on, but to go back a step, why was the private guy like me who wants to buy the Comfort Inn for $5 million? Why am I harder to work with? Because I might not make which payment? The payment to the business broker or the payment to the on the loan?
To me, the broker,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, I've had a couple deals where
Wait, where you actually would get me, the buyer, you'd successfully get me to buy the transaction, buy the La Quinta Inn, but then I wouldn't pay you your $100,000 fee?
yeah.
Oh, bullshit. That's not cool.
It was a problem. Later I learned it's other firms have the same problem. A lot of the stuff ends up in court litigation. So you got to, and at the time I didn't like that. I didn't want to go sue the client and deal with that whole
lawyer
stuff.
fees.
I remember
That's
selling
not cool.
selling a whole pizza chain for a guy, and the guy just didn't pay any of the fees.
What? What would the fee have been on that?
Boy, I didn't remember. Probably like 100, 150, something like that.
You ever been stiffed on 100 G's, Dolder?
No, never.
Neither have I.
I got tired of it. I think during
You
the
got
recession.
stiffed multiple times?
Yeah, and some of the stuff they end up coming back and just negotiating with you and saying, "Hey,
I'll give you 50.
well, yeah, let me just give you whatever $20,000 on a $100,000 fee agreement and write off like that."
F you, dude. I
think
would
that-
go like egg his house, toilet paper, do some skids on his grass. What are they called? Lawn jobs?
Yeah, I think that was a big reason getting out of the gas stations. Gas station, I remember, was the
Keep
worst.
getting stiffed?
The worst. I mean, those clients. I remember one that just had handwritten financials he would give me.
But my uncle had a lot of handwritten stuff. But I mean, like that's not cool. That's like dishonest. It's so icky and dishonest.
So it's different with a
They
company.
would sign an agreement saying, "I'm going to pay you your $100,000," and then they don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so shady, dued. So shady.
I had complained to his mom. That was funny.
What?
I got to complain to his mom.
You had to complain to his mom?
Yeah, I told his mom. I said, I sold your son's pizza store chain and pay me. And it was funny.
Did you? What? Yeah, I mean, I would do that. I would fucking do that. Like, what'd you raise? You raised nothing but a piece of diarrhea. That's what you raised. Friggin'. So
companies are good. That's what I realized. Like,
so companies will pay their full fees.
there's recourse. They don't want to get in trouble.
Right.
There's someone higher up you can go
Right.
to. It's an organization. It's not
Right.
just one person.
Right.
So I liked working with any kind of institution.
Okay, so you start moving more with institutions, and again, that probably explodes things even more.
Yeah, but then you got to up your game too. You can't be as shoddy in your process. You need to put proper materials together.
Right.
There's not handshake deals. You need to have the right paperwork.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's
You got to become a lawyer a little bit.
Yeah, you do. A lot of the stuff I've learned to look at my own NDAs and clean them up, negotiate them.
Right.
And your LOIs need to make sense.
Yep.
Those convenience stores, they used to have template contracts.
LOI is a letter of interest, John. It's like showing a prospective buyer or seller, like, hey, I have genuine, authentic interest, and I'm willing to sign this agreement to prove that. Right.
So there's two that come up. There's IOI, which is an indicator of interest, and then LOI is a letter of intent.
Oh, letter of intent. Okay.
So a lot of those smaller transactions, you can jump straight to a letter of intent, which you're just outlining the premise of doing the deal and the fundamental terms. But if you're doing a bigger company, a more formal auction process, you may add an extra step, which you send out some real basic teaser sheets and allow people to opt in with an indicator of interest to formally be part of that process. And then you start releasing more information and getting them to submit a letter of intent.
Right. Okay. That's then the bigger deals. Okay. So does that then lead you into start doing bigger deals and M&A deals?
Yeah.
What was to the extent you're able to share? I mean, this is probably a while ago, but so what was ended up being the biggest deal you worked on, and you're like, holy shit, I did it.
I've worked on some good right at 100 million, both hotels and bank deals, but didn't close.
Oh,
I had a bank.
What would the fees have been on that?
Over $1 million. I had, I remember I had a bank. I got a $103 million offer, and our competitor came in at 106.
Oh, damn! Are you able to share any of the information around any of this? Like who was the bank? Would you have heard of it?
Yeah, they're gone. They got sold. There's a lot of consolidation.
Are they Chicago-based?
Chicago-based.
What was the name?
Local community bank. You know what? I don't want to disclose it because there might be an NDA. Who knows? I don't know. Somebody will bring it back from 15 years ago.
You'll be in court. Fair enough. All right. So you would have made over $1 million. Now, was this Kison working on his own, or are you now part of a company? Is this transatlantic?
Transatlantic, yeah.
So it would have been you.
Right. And I had a partner at the time.
Oh, you did have a partner? Okay.
Yeah, he's good.
I worked I worked at an internship in 2000. In the year 2000, I was looking for a small investment bank in Chicago so that I can get a job on Wall Street. This is my sophomore year. My freshman year, I sold windows. I sold windows as a freshman. I'm from University of Chicago. And all my fellow UFC, colleagues or students, they were all working at like internship at the Federal Reserve, internship at Citibank, whatever. I couldn't get any of that shit, right? I just called around all these small investment banks. And one of them in St. Charles, Illinois, I had to drive an hour and a half every day back and forth. Gave me an internship. It was called Prairie Capital Advisors.
Okay, I know.
Have you heard of these guys?
Yeah.
Shout out to Ken Gross, Ken Zerwinski and Bob Gross.
Okay.
Awesome dudes who own the company. It's now a legit powerhouse. Like, they have, I want to say, like 50 bankers, maybe 100.
Oh, really? They've grown. Wow.
Hugely grown. And all the guys I was sitting in a little cubicle with, the 4 dudes, are all still there, and they're like running the show now. So, super cool story. But I learned a ton. They literally held my hand as a little kid, as a young 18, 19-year-old kid. So I sold windows my freshman year, Prairie Capital my sophomore year, and then junior year, Solomon, Smith Barney, or like Citigroup. And then I got a full-time gig at JP Morgan for 10 years. So that was my experience. But I was looking for a small bank like what you were doing. So because I wanted to learn the nuts and bolts, and they did teach me a lot of those nuts and bolts.
It's a different experience. I think going to the boutique, you get a lot more hands-on on the whole spectrum of the deal process.
Totally.
But then getting the big name badge on your resume.
Huge.
Yeah, because I think when you start boutique, it gets difficult to go up to a bigger firm. It's possible.
Just
versus if you had a bigger firm first.
Go backwards.
Yeah, it's easier to move around, either lateral or boutique.
Absolutely true. All right, but here's the thing. At 25, 26, 27, I'm not working on deals where I might make $1 million in fees.
Yeah.
I'm getting 60, hoping for a bonus of 20. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you're like leaps and bounds beyond the average 25, 26-year-old banker.
Things are looking up. Things are looking up quick.
Yeah. So keep going. So now you're starting to become an M&A pro, right? You're starting to do these bigger deals.
Yeah. I mean, you're figuring it out fast because everything was just off the seat of the pants.
Yeah.
Where things are just happening.
Yeah.
And there's probably things about the business that you aren't thinking about, like in terms of formalizing the brand, what your marketing strategy should look like.
Right.
Like that wasn't there. It was just a lot of referrals or a lot of this online marketing we're doing.
You're kind of hanging a shingle out and just kind of trying to get as much business as you can get.
Yeah. We had little things that we're doing that works. We had a nice little newsletter that we send out to our network of investors and sellers.
Here's what's up. Here's what's going on in the world. Here's some stuff we're trying to sell.
No, this is just what the deals we're doing. We didn't care what's going on in the world. It's just like, hey,
that's what I mean. Yeah, I guess I mean like this. So basically your newsletter would say these are the deals we're doing.
Yeah, we put them point blank and kept it pretty confidential. But and I think that I remember that we used to send out fax when we first started. It was you'd email this newsletter by fax and have this software to automate it, and then going to email was a big deal.
Oh man, I own a restaurant in Hyde Park. God rest his soul, my dad ran this restaurant for 25 years. I helped him run it at times. And when I walked in, they still had a fax. Yep. And they're still receiving, most of it is bullshit fax, like marketing bullshit. And the other day, the phone just kept ringing. I'm like, you know what? I told one of the employees, I'm like, unplug that shit. Unplug it. I'm like, throw it in the back. You know, she threw it in the back. And I'm like, I'm going to smash the shit out of that fax machine. You know, and it's sitting there waiting for me. I'm just trying to build up, like, how do I want to bust the shit out of this fax machine? So right now I'm in destructive mode. Can't wait till Monday comes. I don't know what I'm going to do this week. I think I'm going to throw it in the, like, I think I'm going to, like, whip it into the dumpster. You know what I mean? Like, really throw it in there.
You know, I get the hammer out. Just...
I feel like it'd be messy, and I got to do a whole bunch of cleanup.
So you got the...
Ask the employee to do the dirty work. Anyway, so that's fax machines. So yeah, you're not thinking about branding, and you're not thinking about marketing so much. You got the newsletter you're rocking, which is kind of marketing.
Yeah, I mean, things were great, but then 2006 came. I remember I tried to buy my own company out of Michigan. I wanted to...
What? You tried to what?
Buy a company.
You yourself?
So the first company.
So now
I
this is
wanted to
different.
buy. Yeah.
Now this is different. When is this? 2006?
Yeah, I think it was right around end of 2006, going to 2007.
How old are you? Like late 20s?
Boy, probably 26 to 28, somewhere around there.
I'm born in 1980. Is that you born around this?
I'm 38 right now.
Oh, shit. You're younger than me. You're born in 81.
I'm born in 81.
Damn, so you're 26, 27, about to buy your first business. That's cool.
Yeah, so I had to been about 26.
So did you buy it?
No. The idea was looking for the perfect business, and I found this methadone clinic.
Methadone.
It was a methadone clinic in Michigan.
Does this sound like a drug to you, John?
Reminds me of Ohio.
Reminds me of Breaking Bad.
But it
reminds me of an RV in New Mexico.
And it's funny because it's just one of those businesses that people don't want to get involved with.
Is this the whole red caution bags shit?
No. This is...
What is methadone clinic?
Methadone's people that are addicted to opiates and meth. They can visit these clinics and take doses of methadone. It's very controlled because they don't just give it to you to leave. You have to take the dosage there. So it's a controlled facility. And there's a doctor there. There's nurses and they're consultants. And it was just an interesting business. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't like this is a tech startup and people want to be part of it. It was very mismanaged. They probably had twice as many employees as they should. So looking at their profitability, they probably were making about $300,000 net profit when they should have been making about $700,000 between these two locations. So I thought, okay, this is some definitely just reconfigure their staffing there.
So you're now thinking, I'm going to buy this business possibly, and then I'm going to make it more efficient, become the operator.
Right. Operate it, but then exit. I wanted to sell it to a larger...
You wanted to do the gas station thing, go from 240 to 550 to 1.1.
Yeah, that's how that. I mean, what better to do a deal, make $300,000 in 3 months, and walk away?
Speaking my language, brother.
So I think we had a contract 1.6, and I was trying to...
Meaning you were going to buy for 1.6?
Right.
Okay.
Under contract 1.6.
So that's like 5 times earnings?
Right. Somewhere we had to pay a little more. I was trying to get it down to 3 to 4, but it was ended up around 5. And it was a funny deal too because they wanted out.
They were trying to get out.
Yeah, it was 2 older men that owned it, and they just wanted out to go live somewhere warm. So they wanted to throw everything in the deal. I think there was another deal to buy the house, and the Mercedes was included. And
Jeez.
They just wanted to get rid of everything. So I packaged it all up, put in a contract, have Fifth Third lined up to do the deal.
Nice. They were going to lend you most of the money?
Yeah. Everything was ready to go.
What would you have had to put down? 10%, 20%?
It was around 20% back then. It was 20%, but then you could keep pulling stuff out. You can do another little loan around it. Do your
like a specific loan for the real estate, for the car.
You know, they had both their properties leased. I remember talking to both of their landlords to figure out like how willing they would be to sell the property just because you could get better financing terms if the property was included. But our original contract was for the business, and I was trying to pull additional contracts to buy, but it was one of those things where they didn't want to sell right away. Maybe we'll sell in 5 years.
The landlord.
Things of that sort, yeah.
Okay.
So at least I was working out to get some options in there to purchase the property.
So you line up the financing. You're about to drop $300,000 down payment on a 1.6 transaction.
I was trying to sell it.
You're trying to what?
Sell that business.
Well, you're trying to buy it in order to later sell it.
No, sell at the same time.
I don't understand. You were going to buy and sell at the same time? Mm-hmm. You were going to buy it for 1.6 yourself and then instantly, like in the same day, sell it the same day?
Not that. I mean, that's a thing real estate guys do a lot, where they buy and sell in the same day, which I think they got a lot tighter restrictions on doing that now.
Yeah.
But it was more about, hey, if we ended up buying it, we're going to hold it for a period of time, but let's not hold it too long.
Right.
Let's like
3 to 6 months.
Yeah, or even if it takes a year, but let's have a clear path of an exit.
Correct.
And know what that looks like, because it's a bit of a unique business. It's not like a restaurant where there's a lot of people that just want to own a restaurant. That's a really marketable business. There's only a handful of people that would really buy that business, which is going to be somebody already with a similar portfolio that wants to expand. And I wanted to maximize the value, so I was really targeting publicly traded companies that focused on those kind of businesses and looked at their multiples. And it's a beautiful thing if you have the patience and can learn to read S1 filings. Because S1 filings tells you everything, all the secrets about every company.
Is that for public companies or for private companies?
Public. So S1 filing is your IPO filing, your initial offering.
Okay.
It's typically a long document.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's what Aramco has recently filed for selling the Saudi Arabian. Actually, maybe for them, they don't have to file S1 because they're going to be listing on the Saudi exchange.
They might have a variation of that.
A variation, right?
You're basically disclosing.
Uber, WeWork filed their S1 and shit hit the fan, and they're now no longer going IPO. Yeah. So that's the S1, right?
Right, and that's probably where you saw a lot of comments. People would comb through it and say, "Oh, here's something that the founder did, and that's shady," or whatever they call it.
Adam Newman is trying to lease to WeWork the word "we" for $6 million. Did you hear about that?
Right. Yeah. And so, but you have to disclose that in the S1 filing.
Right.
Right. So it's always interesting to look at.
Wait, why are we talking about S1 filings? Because you're doing a private transaction for a methadone clinic.
But I wanted to sell it to a publicly traded company, and to understand how much they would pay for it, you do a little research, and when you look in their S1 filing, you could see at the time of them IPO what acquisitions they've done, how much they paid for it.
You're working backwards, baby. I like this guy, Kison. Damn, that's smart.
So then you ballparked that, hey, I could probably sell this to them for about $3.5 million.
Is that what you were finding? Mm-hmm. Oh, shit. This is great, dude. Did you do it?
No, I got lost. Because right at the end of 2006, that's when things tanked. And at the time, I was working a lot of hotel deals. I had 5 hotel deals, both acquisition. Hotels were buying. Hotels were help on behalf of clients. Hotels were selling. Finance deals, because I started getting into some mortgage banking where you put together the finance, and actually found that to be pretty lucrative. And everything stopped.
06 or 08?
This is right at 07, right? Going into 07.
Going into the Great Recession.
Yeah.
The financial crisis.
Literally, you had some weird responses from some of these banks.
Yeah.
I think it was Credit Suisse or... which was one? There's another bank too where their response came back was like, we're not doing loans over $1 million.
Over $1 million. So the Fifth Third one pulled out. The 1 point they were going to lend you 1.3 million. Yeah,
they stopped. They didn't even give a clear reason.
Damn.
And nothing could get picked up then. I was scrambling to close the other deals that I needed to run the business, and everything stopped. I mean, 5 deals all pending. None of them closed.
Wow. This is a great illustration of how shit froze on the smaller side of things.
Yeah, it's tough when you're small and you're independent. You live off of these deals.
That's your blood. That's your lifeblood.
And going into that year, your anticipations for the most profitable year you're going to have.
Oh man!
And you end up losing money.
Unfortunately, right?
You end up losing. So,
dude, I thought I was going to lose my job because everyone was getting fired on Wall Street.
Yeah,
they were just cutting heads like it was no one's business. And one of my clients calls me up and was like, hey, one of our funds is going under. We need to kind of do a Hail Mary. What ideas you have? And I came up with this idea, and they were kind of thinking of, they came up with the idea, and I kind of built around it and built that out. And they wanted to basically do a $1 billion transaction, but it was a zero coupon bond, which should mean nothing to anyone. But basically, they wanted to do a very, very large $1 billion transaction. And I'm like, damn, like the markets are frozen. Nobody is lending money to anyone.
Yeah.
And the idea we had was we were going to have this company, my client, lend a large amount of money to Freddie Mac Freddie Mac is the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, right? They are the ones who will borrow money in the open markets and then lend it to me and you and John to go buy a house.
Right.
And so and at that time, everyone thought Freddie was going under, Fannie Mae was going under, the whole government. And so we did the deal. We were actually able to do the deal, and it was kind of dramatic because no one was lending to anyone. So my name was kind of in lights at JP Morgan that I was able to push this deal through.
Nice.
I know. I got emailed and copied on some pretty big dogs at JP Morgan all the way up to the CEO. So it was amazing. And it was like I really saw how frozen the markets were and how difficult it was to get that deal done. You know, everyone was just walking on thin ice trying to do the deal. And it took weeks to get it through. And then when it hit, everyone was like, whoa, somebody did $1 billion deal. Who the hell did that shit? You know, so I was part of that. Thinking about frozen markets on my end, that's how I've thought about frozen markets. I've never thought of it from the smaller guy's perspective who's got this $1 million deal lined up, this $3 million deal lined up, this $5 million deal lined up, and then boom, all shut down instantaneously.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of hotels. We were doing a lot of financing, 20, 30, even some a little bigger, closer to 50 million, and nothing got done.
Wow. So that whole year basically just gets shot.
Yeah, the banks were worse. All those bank deals, when you had stuff lined up and everything's trading at like 2x book value, and the sellers don't even want that. They want more than that. And then the game changed. You can't even get 1x book value.
Are you talking about banks, meaning selling banks?
Yeah, because they look at their assets, and their multipliers are a little different. They're looking at, they call it book value. So you basically total up the assets.
Meaning, like, if I'm a bank, what you're looking at as a business broker is how much in stock equity, how much money have investors given this bank. Let's say they given the bank $10 million. That's going to basically be driving the value of that bank. Right. How much equities holders, how much equity there is in the bank.
Right.
Okay. And so what's book value in relation to equity? What is book value?
That's what it is.
It's what it is?
Yeah.
Book value is equity.
Right. And then you had your total assets because you're able to lend against that equity.
Yeah. If $10 million of equity investors bring that money to a bank and they put $10 million into a bank, that bank is now able to borrow, let's say, 40 more million. Mm-hmm. And now they have a total of 40 million borrowed, 10 million equity, 50 million total
assets. Yeah.
And they can now lend out that 50 million and trying to make some money.
Yep.
And the 40 million can come from borrowing from the Fed, but it really comes from deposits. Right. Borrowing money from your average depositor.
Right.
Okay, and so you trying to sell banks was even harder. Of course. Who wants to touch a bank
all
at that
those
time?
Stopped. All those, good times.
That's a great recession. All right, so then I'm sure shit unfreezes and you get back to doing your M&A. Or is this where you pivot into the world of project management software for M&A deals?
So I had to downsize. I let the office go even. I just sort of really cut all expenses just because deals weren't getting done. And even that last year, I ended up losing $100,000 because you had to pay all the overhead for having an office and staff and so forth.
Breaking the lease.
And I'm trying to remember. I think I got out of the lease. I figured something out to get out of the lease. And I ended up working as a sole practitioner, but it was different. I remember doing a gas station deal where I was working with private investors again to buy auction properties. BP was selling all their retail properties, so I got involved in that. I got involved
because at this point, a lot of stuff is now distressed, and there is actually a lot of shit to sell at this point.
So I did another hotel deal. They had a large portfolio of about 20, 25 assets across the U.S. that were larger hotels.
Damn.
But again, working with private investors, bidding on single assets at a time. And that was okay. That was just something to do. But I was really interested in doing something in tech. I just saw tech as a future. The Facebooks were just starting. The LinkedIns were just starting, and seeing this is a whole new world that's going to change everything.
Wow.
Like imagining M&A with like the LinkedIn dynamics where there's some clear transparency on who you're talking to, because that was the frustrating part, right? I didn't know who I'm talking to. That was the worst part of dealing with private investors.
Meaning NDAs and confidentiality, you had no clue who you're talking to.
Outside of that, there's just good characters and bad characters.
Yeah, guys who will not pay you your $100,000 fee.
And how do you know? And then that was like the thing. I could see your network, if I could see some reviews or some trails, where is the reputation there? I do it on LinkedIn when I connect with people. You look at them and say, oh, where's our common contacts? And we got a whole spectrum of it. And I can say, oh, you're associated with some really good people I know. And that's that reputation I can build with you quickly.
Wow. It's a game changer, huh?
Right. Or then I connect with John. John, like, fuck, man. I know these guys, but I'm barely associated with them and don't think highly of them.
Right.
So you had that perspective too. I thought this is going to change things. And just thinking about the process management, all the inefficiencies I dealt with. I used to build my own tools and try to handle things in-house, but thought there's things I've learned about that. Is there things I can apply to other companies? Can we build some solutions as software and be able to take to other companies and help them?
So you start moving out of the deal making mind, borrow $1 million, borrow $5 million, sell this business, buy this business. You start thinking more macro, and you're like, how can I make this process more efficient?
Yes.
And so how did you decide to make that? So is this where Agile M&A starts to come into play and DealRoom, the software you've created?
I started DealRoom in 2012. So between the time when the recession and the whole meat of the recession, there was a lot of dabbling around in various tech things. I didn't jump straight into doing tech for M&A. I was interested in marketing technologies. And one of the things that same Methadone clinic deal, I was looking through their...
we didn't forget it.
So looking through their S1 filing, right? Because S1 filings is just great. Every company can get away with a bunch of crazy things that you would deem as very inappropriate. But as long as it's in the S1 filing, you can totally get away with it.
No shit.
Right? I've seen a lot of really interesting things where the founders and principals have little subsidiaries that just have exclusive agreements and just a lot of conflicts of interest.
Oh, really?
But it's disclosed. It's in their S1 filing. So
and people will still buy their IPO.
I still buy it. I see that all the time.
Do you remember, is there something that you remember that was like the craziest story?
Well, what caught my eye on that company I was looking to sell that clinic to was one of the deals, the acquisitions they did was they bought a portfolio of 100 .coms.
Of what?
100 .coms.
Oh, 100 domain names?
Just 100 domain names are all affiliated with drug rehab.
That's a boss move.
Right? And they bought it. They paid $6 million for it. And
for the 100 .coms.
100 .coms. And I started looking at some of them and just going back, understanding the strategy behind it. And what they did is they turned it into a big lead gen system. Because anytime you search for rehab, for whatever it was, different things.
Methrehab.com.
And then it would land, you would get directed through search to one of those domains, and they all centralized to one call center.
Ah.
And then they would get you set up. They maybe consult with you for a little bit over the phone.
Gangster. It'd be like in comedy, if we bought every domain related to comedy. Like, so John's a stand-up comedian. I do stand-up comedy as well. So it'd be like, bookfunnycomedian.com, bookfunny.com, bookandentertainer.com, and over and buying 100 of those, all of those names. And so they bought all of those for meth rehab or heroin rehab or opiate rehab. They bought all those domain names. And what they did was they set them up so that when people Google search all of those types of names and words, they would click on the link and it would all feed to one website, this company's website.
Right.
What was the name of the company? Do you remember?
That company was CRC. I think CRC.
They're a public company, right?
Yeah.
CRC.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so you learned from them about that gangster move. That is a gangster move.
So,
it's marketing.
And I looked at that and I was looking at the Google ad spend. Google had always had nice tools so you can analyze what the cost per clicks are in advertising. And I noticed financial.coms were really high. But back in the day, it was 25 cents a click, 50 cents a click.
I remember that,
but financial domains were a couple bucks a click. It was a lot of times a 5x, 10x higher.
It kind of makes sense. Like if I type in, I want to buy a credit card Chase.com is going to be paying $2-3 for me to click on them, right? It'll come right up.
Right. Exactly. That's a high ticket. They get a good fee.
They make
off
so
of
much.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I started buying financial.coms.
Oh, no shit.
Just keywords, keyword domains.
Really? This is 2012?
This is 2007, 8.
Okay, you were doing that earlier.
About 7, 8. Yeah. So
What were some good ones? What was the best one you owned?
And Capital. I have
A&D?
Yeah, and Capital. That's a good one. I have listoffunds.com.
That's pretty good.
List of Funds, I had 90,000 hits a month on that thing without
Holy shit, 90,000 hits a month.
And
That's worth something.
It was just some, you know what I did was I put this early days, you could do this on Google. I had a script that would just randomly display 1 of 10 articles. Just out of just random. That was it. That was the only thing it did. But for whatever reason, Google's algorithm always thought I was updating my content.
Right.
And it just wasn't really
keep getting you
optimized.
in the high level.
So I did that for a lot of these .coms, and I started making revenue off of for click ads.
Yeah.
And it worked. So that's why some of those domains picked up pretty well. List of funds.
That's smart.
They just came to my little thing. They had an article that had nothing to do with anything, but
Right.
they just kept refreshing, and it came up pretty good.
Smart, man. It's just hustling. Every day I'm hustling. That's great, dude.
It was the thing I didn't know. I saw this little thing. I thought it, but it wasn't like I was building a real product to solve a problem.
Yeah.
It was, hey, we're building like this little ad network out of these .coms, but maybe I can sell this.
I think what it is you're in a marketing laboratory. That's what you were doing.
Right.
You're running a marketing laboratory to learn and understand and experiment.
And I was learning. It evolved. I started to get more sophisticated and start developing software to manage these domains on scale. And I got to a point where I had about 200 websites up.
Oh, 200?
All keyword domains.
Were most of them financial?
Yeah, everything was financial related.
Oh, shit. Are some of these still up and running?
I think I peaked out at having 500, but then I'm down
You
to
had 500 domain names, dude.
I mean, we buy some ones. I think I bought what was it, like your ass or something. So just so I have the email, like
John's on that website every day, by the way.
at your ass.
It's my favorite That's my favorite website.
Dude, did you really buy your ass?
That was your ass, bitch. It was just so I could have the email, you know, at your
Kison
ass,
at yourassbitch.com. Yo, that'd be amazing.
I mean, so there were some dumb buys.
Your
like
business card would just be amazing.
There was some dumb
It's your
buys.
ass, bitch. I mean,
mostly were financial. Most of them were all related to investments. I think we still have like private marketplace and investments related.
yeah, that's good. That's great. All right. So wait. But it sounds like through all of this experimentation, you're starting to evolve towards marketing and software and project management, less deal making.
Yeah. I mean, it was about building ad revenue, building a network of sites, getting more smarter about the content. So you're generating content that's related to the keyword of the domain. But we couldn't keep up with Google. I mean, Google's algorithm, they just kept making it more sophisticated. Then the thing we used to do was link these domains to each other because their algorithm was pretty simple. How many links you got to your site, put you up. And they figured that out, dubbed it link farming, and everything was gone.
Oh, shit.
It was almost overnight. Just all your revenues got, you're completely, all your 200 sites up are off the grid.
What were you making in revenue on these, like at its peak?
Not a crazy amount. We're
Like
probably
$5,000 a month?
Yeah, it was around 5, 6 a month, something like that. It was doing good, but I was spending money hiring people
To manage it all?
I wanted to build custom stuff just to make it smarter.
Yeah.
Start putting some content, get people more interested in it, so they actually see some content that they want to read.
You were starting to build a digital marketing ad agency.
Good platform.
That's what it sounds like.
Then I wanted to sell ads from other people than just Google. So we build, what was it, like OpenX was one of the frameworks we used. And
Okay.
I remember building off a LifeRay's portal system and using that to drive this content.
Okay.
And we got pretty sophisticated.
That sounds pretty good. So, okay. So is this what leads you into creating an M&A project software?
Yeah, after that
Project management
fails,
software?
after all that fails and you're kind of scratching your head on what to do, I think it was around 2010 or 11, I bought findbanker.com.
Here we go. You bought what?
Findbanker.com.
Findbanker.com.
I thought, they have care.com. and it's a great website to go find a babysitter.
Oh, hell yeah. We're on it all the time.
I love the interface. I thought, this is smart. Why the fuck is it so hard to find a banker? And I thought about this, like getting a mortgage. It's a relationship driven.
Totally.
Like you want to work with someone cool.
Just like babysitter.
Exactly. You want to trust that person.
Totally.
And it's very personal. It doesn't work to just walk into the bank and work with anybody, because if you don't click with that person, it doesn't go anywhere.
That's pretty good.
Right? Even at JPM, there could be some good guys that I work with, or the guys you don't want to work with.
Absolutely.
So that was
Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Have you read this book?
Yes, really. I actually bought a copy to read with my daughter. So
beautiful. What a smart dude, man. I got to take lessons from you about my daughter. So the thing that stuck with me forever from that book is all else is this quote. All else, I memorized it. All else being equal, people would rather do business with their friends.
Yes.
And it's so true.
Yes.
And that's when I was like, I'm done learning from University of Chicago and math formulas and all this other bullshit, which is fantastic. But it was, at some level, I'm like, wait a minute. The differentiator here, especially on Wall Street, because everyone's from Princeton and Harvard and U of C and Northwestern, the differentiator is, can I be friendly? Can I be personable? Can I be cool to be around? Can I be fun to have a conversation with? That's probably how this podcast was born, is just working on that for so much. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it sounds to me like you picked up on that in a big way when it comes to findabanker.com.
It was, but it was driven off of assumptions, right? You just had this idea that, hey, here's another little segment that we could apply it, which I'm a little more familiar with. But again, these assumptions, I didn't realize that there'd be all these compliance hurdles. And I remember even trying to get my own banker at Chase to sign up, make a profile.
He wouldn't.
And they were willing to. They're like, hey, love what you're doing, had a good relationship with you, but I got to run this through compliance. And they shoot it down.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And looking back,
most people will never come on this podcast for that reason. Most people who work at JP Morgan or Deutsche Bank will never come on this podcast.
I struggled with mine. I got to, I do a podcast.
Yeah. I listened to your Wintrust one. I was like, wow, they let a Wintrust guy come on here.
Yeah. But he was pretty senior. And that's the thing I learned. Sometimes I go up and PR shoots it down, or communications department shoots it down. Sometimes.
By the way, I'm sorry, we did not plug your podcast. So just those listening, not only do you run DealRoom, the project management software company, but you run a podcast called M&A Science.
Right.
Where because you're an M&A Pro, you basically will get business professionals to come on as guests, and in an educational format, you tease out of the guest their experience with M&A in a way where the listeners can learn about M&A.
Exactly. Educational. It's working with mostly corporate development professionals, but we'll mix it up and try to set it around a learning objective and just learn lessons from experience from these practitioners. So educational, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, yeah. And you're saying you have trouble with that sometimes from a compliance perspective.
From the compliance
getting
perspective.
People on to come on.
It can be. But if you get the guest to drive it helps. You're just trying to reach out, or I've had it. Like I said, anybody can shoot it down. You have a lot more moving parts in a bigger company.
I've had some very senior people who run divisions at various banks, and they're like, I'm gonna fight like hell to try and get on your podcast. Most of them get shot. A couple have made it. A couple push really hard and have made it. But I have had to give them the whole podcast and get it approved before it goes public.
Yep. There's that. I've seen some. It's just part of their company culture where they just don't want any of that type of exposure.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. All right. So wait, we still haven't gotten to. We got to Find Your Banker. What's it called? Find Your Banker.
Findbanker.com.
Findbanker.com. But so, how does Find Banker and its struggles or failures, how does that lead you into project management software?
Yeah, a lot of assumptions. A short story didn't pan out. I couldn't get the bankers to line, and it's a marketplace. Models are really hard. So I did that, and it was a pretty quick ride. Built it out real quick, had the prototype going. Really struggled to get the bankers on there.
Yeah.
Probably looking hindsight back, I would probably would have focused more on the community banks.
Exactly.
And I
get
did
approvals there.
I'm downtown Chicago trying to walk in every major bank and doing that. And that was just the wrong approach. So there's the go-to-market was a big fail there. It was probably the root cause of that failure.
Right.
And I wanted to do stuff around the whole private stock market. And remember we had that big emergence of the securities, selling private securities to non-accredited investors.
Yeah.
I was interested in that. And
that just happened in the last couple of years, few years, right?
it did.
One year, 2 years?
I had the idea for it.
Where now any individual like John or me can just buy stock in someone's company, right?
Yeah. And
That previously wasn't available.
I started modeling it out.
Down to like $1, right? Like you can just buy whatever you want.
Right.
Yeah.
I started modeling that out. I thought like, hey, this could be a cool thing.
I agree.
It was really before a lot of the buzz came in. And I didn't really think through what the compliance part of it looked like. But I kept building this roadmap around it. And it became a pretty comprehensive roadmap for an M&A deal lifecycle, basically. I mean, here was a piece of having a marketplace to be able to put deals through, because initially it was, let me sell stock or equity in my company.
Yeah, my little coffee shop. I want to sell stock in my coffee shop.
Right. And then
10 grand.
And then raise some money. And then it became like, well, why don't we do this for M&A and have a marketplace for M&A? And then you sort of, and this is the whole problem. It's like beyond feature creep. You're just building the Swiss Army knife of a solution.
Beyond future creep? Is that what you said?
Beyond feature creep.
Feature creep?
You ever heard the term feature creep?
No. Have you heard feature creep?
No, not at all.
So let's say we're going to build an app. We're going to build an app to hail taxi cabs, right? And the next thing you know, you're like, well, it'd be cool if I can also hail a boat because we got a river on the Chicago. So let me add that in there. You know, it'd be cool if we could have a chat functionality so I can like chat my friend to come meet me at the boat. And hey, maybe I just want to like socially meet random people. Let me put that in there so we got some dating matching component to it.
It becomes like Uber meets Curb meets Match.com meets Facebook.
But you see how it turns into disaster quickly.
Feature creep.
There's no clear focus.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. I had this marketplace idea and it was simple in the beginning, but I always just got interested in the M&A part and kept thinking more in that direction. So
okay.
It became a quick, like, you know what? Let's scratch all this. And I think the project at the time was called In a Place. And we ended up really focusing on management of M&A deals. And that's around 2012 when it came back. Started from a clean slate. I had a guy I worked with that was really good at prototyping software. And we just built something really quick. And same thing, I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of assumptions. And it took a good hard lesson to learn. And this is the one thing I noticed. People always do this. And I just had it this week. You got a great idea. You want to build an app. Everybody's so anxious to build things. You asked me today, and Amer, I'm convinced we don't need to build new product or technology. The problem we have is there's so much stuff out there, but a lot of us are suffering from a distribution problem. There's a lot of great technology out there, but it's just not getting the right hands of the people that need it. And that's a bigger challenge.
That's a marketing issue. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Marketing and just knowing the customer and how to get the product to that customer, it goes a little more than the marketing itself. Because you could market things well, but then still struggle.
But I feel like a component of marketing is know your audience and get your product into what's the best way to get my product into this audience member's hand.
Right.
You know, that I feel like how I think about marketing.
But then there's pieces where you need enterprise sales, right? If you have a product that really requires high touch and a complex sales process.
Yeah.
So it's broadly thinking about distribution, like where
I see distribution.
What's going to go into it? What are those pieces?
So you're saying you see the world right now in a way where there's too much shit out there, whether it's for business to business or consumers. It's too much shit out there. And the problem we actually have is we don't need more shit. We need more better quality distribution.
That's a skill to develop. Like before you build, because I've seen people build great products, but they struggle with the distribution and it fails. Well, if there's a way you could learn distribution and get ahead of that early. What was the book? Content Inc. Content Inc. was a good book because it's all about building the following and then build the products to sell to your following. right? That's a great model. That's what I'm realizing looking back at all this stuff I did. It was
Build the following.
too obsessed with building products and doing all that stuff, which is good. And it wasn't to the point where I realized making these mistakes and the whole lean startup craze was kicking off. But taking those principles, understanding how to do a customer development interview and really learning properly how to do that, that's what helps validate what you're building.
Right.
Because you interview somebody like yourself that would be representing the cohort of my potential customers.
Right.
Understand your pain points. And it's both art and science, because I got to frame questions that are unbiased. Because everybody loves your idea, and I'm naturally gonna.
They're gonna all say, "Yeah, I love this." Yeah.
Yeah, like, hey, I got that. He'll see in my eyes that this guy's in love with his idea,
Totally.
and I'm just gonna be a good friend and head nod and agree with him, and
Totally.
keep him in this positive mood, and
Totally.
you know, maybe he'll buy the next round of drinks or something. So with this, you want to do the opposite. You really want to be and coming with
detached,
the mindset that whatever you know is wrong, or you don't know anything.
Wait. What is that? What mindset?
The mindset that whatever you think you know is wrong.
Wow.
Or you just don't know anything at all.
That's kind of like disrupting yourself.
It is. It's.
I'm going to assume that everything I think I know is wrong.
Yes.
And I'm going to question every assumption I have.
Yeah.
And then that's how I'm going to approach this customer conversation, this potential customer conversation.
You know what ends up happening? And then you want to understand that person's challenges and weigh it. Like, what's the biggest priority? What is the biggest pain point? Because the pain point, if it's really minor, they don't really care. They're not going to spend money to solve it, right? But what happens is you end up finding bigger problems than you thought there was. And this is in our practice today. When I work with a company, I'm working with primarily 1 to 10 billion market cap companies. And the first thing I want to do is understand the process so I can map it out. I know who's doing what and who they're reporting to and what that flow looks like. But then I want to know who those key personas are. And that's where I want to dig in. I want to have a one-on-one conversation. The same approach. Understand their challenges and pain points deeply, like truly, to get that emotional feelings about what's really bothering them and causing pain.
Could that be used in the restaurant industry or in the stand-up comedy business?
Everything, day-to-day life. Go home with your wife and just, you've had a tough day.
Ask some questions.
Yeah, because it's that empathy. It's about getting inside their head and making them feel felt.
So, for example, in the restaurant industry, I would ask a group of 5 to 10 people who live in Hyde Park, which is where the restaurant is, invite them in for a tasting. And get in their head by asking them some, as best as I can, unbiased questions. What are your pain points with food? What are your pain points when it comes to ordering out? What are your pain points when it comes to going to a restaurant? So on and so forth.
Yeah, but start from the top. It's like, why do you go out to eat? Like, what triggers that? Is it, and then you start learning.
I'm in a bad mood, or someone in my family got sick and I just wanted to change my mood, for example.
Then you start learning that there's different ways that sway people from going out to eat. Because maybe, hey, I only go out to eat when it's a social meeting. I'm trying to catch up with my friends. Versus what's driving them to order in food. And so there's a lot. Or you could start from the very top and just be like, what makes you hungry? What?
Yeah. What makes you decide which restaurant to go to? All those kinds of. How about in the stand-up comedy business? If John and I were two guys who often put on stand-up shows, where we invite people out to come watch a 45-minute or 1 hour show for $5 or $10, we would potentially get a group of our colleagues who go to shows.
Right.
And we'd ask similar questions.
Yeah. Because you want to know what was good and bad about your show, right?
Well, I don't know. You tell me, because do we do this before we create the product, or do we do this like, hey, give us feedback on our product?
Well, you could do both, right? Because in that lean startup context, it was, in the beginning, it's a problem interview, right? Because you want to understand the problem. And then as you get a clear understanding, you do 30, 40 of these interviews, you start seeing patterns.
Right.
And you're like, all right, this is the problem I need to solve.
Right.
What can I do to solve it? And maybe you're just building an outline on how you can solve it, but you keep doing that, go back and do solution interviews and then iterate on it. Software, the wireframes is common. I personally don't like them. I'd rather hire somebody from Upwork or something low cost option.
Build out the wireframe.
And just to do mock-ups. I'd rather give something a little visual. It'll cost you a little bit of money, but just find some junior level person and then show them saying, hey, what do you think of this? Would this solve your problem? And if you do it right, people would buy into it and you'll line up some potential customers that way. But again, people want to make you happy and they'll promise they'll buy stuff.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah, get the money in your hand is a little different story.
So this is all called almost like preview distribution or like early indication of customer demand or early forecast of how distribution would go.
It's just validation, right? The comedy skit, like what do we think is funny, right? Can we validate that ahead of time? Like jokes about certain topics versus race, religion, and what are people gonna? How many people? Because there's jokes that don't land well and offend people, right?
Depends on the audience, but exactly.
You've had anybody storm out on you before?
No, I've had people on an improv team threaten to quit the team because of material I've put out there on stage.
I saw an act in New York a couple months ago, and an audience stormed out. I mean, went on a clear tangent and let the talent have it before he stormed out.
I've seen that many times.
Right. It happens.
It hasn't happened on me yet, no.
But it's just funny. Like, it was just some little thing he was sensitive about.
Totally.
Yeah.
I was at a Colin Quinn show one time. Do you know Colin Quinn?
No, I don't.
He's a longtime comic. You know Colin Quinn.
Yeah,
right?
I know Colin.
I remember I used to watch him as a kid on MTV. He used to run a show called Remote Control. Does that ring a bell at all? MTV Remote Control?
No.
Yeah. So, and then he's had so many one-man shows and stand-up shows. He's had other shows too that are not coming to mind right now. But
yeah, he used to have Tough Crowd on Comedy Central.
Yeah, Tough Crowd on Comedy Central, exactly. So anyways, he's been around for a long time. And he's telling a joke. Oh man, I lost the joke now. Let me think. It was, I can't remember it. Something about biology. It was basically about animals and how some ridiculous observation about gorillas and apes and things like that. And a woman stands up in Thalia Hall in Pilsen. She's in the balcony, stands up and screams out, "That's not funny." And he's like, "Excuse me?" And she's like, "That's not funny. I'm a biologist. I don't find that funny." He's like, "Ma'am, you do know this is a comedy show. I'm not trying to be serious here. I'm actually joking, And then everyone around her starts kicking her out, like, "Get out of here, get out of here." Like they're yelling at her. They're like, "You're at the wrong show, lady."
That's so funny.
And she storms out. And then he goes, I think she walks out and he's like, it wasn't that funny, so maybe she had a point. So anyway, that shit can happen where, people will storm out. Yeah, I guess the beautiful thing about stand-up comedy, especially when you go to open mics, is you're getting that feedback and validation instantaneously.
Yeah.
You just got to say words and read the reaction. Boom, you've got customer validation.
You'll keep iterating on it every time.
Exactly. I know no other business where you have to fail faster than stand-up comedy. You just have to keep failing. Fail. It's hard. So, okay, so I get it. So did you do some of this for DealRoom, the project management software?
Yeah, that's why that product was successful. I had a lot of ideas on it and that same feature creep roadmap, all the stuff I want to build. But until I really dialed it in and had that tight feedback loop, that's when we started building a good product. And minimal. We just built the things that were really important. And I look back at our product today, because we're about starting 2012, it's going on 8 years. Very, very little of this stuff is my idea. Very, very little. Great majority, 90% of it's from customers, from feedback loops, from...
This podcast, not my idea. It's from dear friends who kept repeating to me over and over, like, "Dude, you need to do a daily show or something like that, but for finance and business."
Yep.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay, like CNBC meets The Daily Show?" They're like, "Yes, you need to do that." And so I just kept getting feedback from people over and over and over, and this is what it's evolved to. And so you're saying, and I thought, John, I think that jokes would benefit tremendously from just talking to people outside of a bar or whatever, and finding what everyone's talking about, and then going to write jokes about that. and seeing what people find funny.
Yeah, so just talking to strangers.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But strangers are not, but strangers are good. And just hearing like what they're talking about, what's on their mind, and asking them what they think is funny about that, and then taking that and going and write some stuff about it.
Yeah, I think you can discover some new stuff doing that.
And you're saying you did that with regards to DealRoom, where you just kept getting feedback over and over and over, and you're like, I'm just going to keep building what these people are telling me to build.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big driver of it, was having tight feedback. We still do that today. We don't like building stuff. If we have a harebrained idea, we just try to really see what the customer wants, or if we do have something, it's got to still get validated.
And you'll just pick up the phone and call some of your customers?
You try to do them in person, show them some stuff. We got some customers, hey, we have some new stuff. We'd love you to check it out, give us some feedback on it. If they're good customers, they're happy with what you provided so far, they're happy to do that for you.
All right. So you create this project management software, and it helps corporate development teams at Google and wherever else, HP, Xerox, which is the one we were talking about. Oh, I guess you've clearly pivoted. You're no longer doing deal after deal. My wonder is like, is M&A really... I mean, you're in a niche, right? You're kind of in a niche, meaning a small number of people need this product.
Right.
Right? Like, we asked John, what is M&A? He'd be like, what the hell? I don't even know what M&A stands for.
It's a sizable market because there's always tens of thousands of transactions that happen every year at different size and levels. So that there's definitely a lot of these transactions happen. If you look at it fundamentally, M&A is the largest corporate expenditure a company could possibly make.
Oh, shit. I never thought about it that way.
Right? Because the largest transactions that happen in this world.
So Xerox is offering to buy HP for, I forgot what the number, $27 billion, I want to say.
Right.
Yeah, Xerox, that's their biggest expense, is $27 billion purchase of another company. I see what you're saying. So a project management software that makes that way smoother is a fantastic investment for them.
Today, a lot of those large deals still are managed in Excel.
In Excel.
Yep. The big billion-dollar deals are still managed in Excel.
Antiquated. At our restaurant right now, we manage our whole catering system. We do a lot of catering. It's all managed in some, rinky-dink, shitty-ass Excel spreadsheet I built 10, 15 years ago when I was a kid. It's still being... And I went online. I'm like, there's got to be something. And sure enough, I found a whole catering... Actually, no, the chef that works with me got me onto a catering software. I'm like, we need to get this. We need to get this project management software right away.
Made it a lot easier for you.
We're about to upload it and use it. Okay. And he said he was using it as a previous job, and it was made things way easier.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how to think about what you're doing. Is in your opinion, is M&A... Let's go very simple. In your mind, what's a parallel to M&A in real life for John to understand?
A marriage, maybe? I've heard of marriage before.
Marriage? So a relationship? So if Xerox and HP really get in bed together.
But do you know what I mean the complexity of it? Because it's not
What did you ask?
The complexity of it, it's very emotional. It's more than just the financial means that we're combining. We're not just putting our bank accounts together, but we got to live together. We got to like each other. We got to be able to get along well. And it continues and progresses, especially if we're going to make babies and our products together.
Right.
So that it's different than what you see on the onset. It's not just purely stock prices coming together and trying to get the 1 + 1 = 3. There's a lot of consideration put into the value that's going to be derived off the deal. And a lot of these deals have big numbers behind them because they're predicting synergies that, like we talked about earlier, those cost savings, those revenue additions that they'll make. But then that vision's there, right? To innovate, to do something beautiful by making this acquisition happen.
Having a baby.
Right. And then day one comes, the first day of ownership, the first day.
When the merger actually happens?
When it's finally closed and it's the first day the deal's completed and it gets chaotic.
Is that where your software comes in, or is your software coming in before?
We come in through the whole life cycle.
So from the beginning, from announcement.
They'll source deals and manage it because you're tracking, looking at things early on. Maybe its timing's not right and you want to take notes and nurture relationships. And then you get to the point where you get more serious and you start going through phases of due diligence.
So like Xerox and HP. Xerox was probably looking at this for the last few years, and the timing may not have been right. And as time went on, they're like, oh shit, now is the better time.
Very, very well so.
And your project management software would has built-in features to make that happen.
Correct. To manage that pipeline management of what deals you're looking at. And then as you get more serious, you start going through those steps of the deal, right? So typically you're going to source the deal. So you're hunting around for it. Then you're going to start evaluating these deals. What's that company worth? How are we going to make money on this? And start developing the investment thesis. And then diligence comes up when you want to research and study to make sure what's represented is true and identify the risks. So the whole diligence exercise is to minimize the risks of the deal. You don't want a big surprise to pop up after you close that costs you a ton of money. And
oh, fuck. Monsanto and Bayer. Are you familiar with this merger?
Familiar with it, yeah.
Holy shit. Is that can you think of a bigger shit show, M&A shit show than that one?
I'm not familiar with the details in terms of what went wrong on that one.
Have you heard of Roundup, the pesticide?
Yeah. Oh, the lawsuits.
Bayer bought Monsanto literally like a few nights before all of these lawsuits came out, and they weren't aware of them. Right? Bayer pays billions for Monsanto. I believe it's Monsanto. Yeah. And then, boom, the lawsuits start coming in. $1 billion here, $500 million here, $1 billion here. Bayer is like considering bankruptcy at this point.
Wow.
What an M&A shit show. Every time I open up the paper and I read about that, I'm like, holy shit. I just smacked my head. I can't believe that. They did not use your software.
Oh, yep, no.
Bayer would have benefited from owning your software.
It's important. You got to do good diligence. A lot of this stuff gets mixed up because of collaboration. When you're buying a company and you think about the life cycle, so you imagine the two CEOs in first class somewhere and they make the handshake deal, or what was the company? Was it Qualtex that SAP had a napkin $8 billion agreement they wrote? So you have that figuratively, but sort of true, right? And then you go through, and as you go through this process, you're bringing more people in. And you get through the things where we get some idea how much this company's worth. We're throwing some offers, and everybody's getting pretty serious. And we're going to start doing diligence. So I want to pull in my head of marketing to check their stuff out, my head of legal, the IT guys, pulling all my functional leads in. And one of the big immediate problems in the industry is that these guys don't work together on a daily basis. And you need to get them working together as a team to really identifying the risks.
Do you mean the functional leads don't work together on a daily basis?
They don't most of the time.
So all the functional leads at Bayer may not be talking every day.
They might, and they don't. They have their own team they manage,
right?
And they're
focused on they're focused on the people who are directly reporting to them.
But you needed them to come check things out with because you're going to end up.
So you're saying it's a collaboration issue, meaning like the CMO, the CEO, the CIO, the CFO of all of Bayer are suddenly like, oh shit, we got to collaborate. Well, we don't normally collaborate together.
What happens is they'll go through diligence and they're working in their own little work silos. And they usually have a template list of what they need to look for. And it becomes a monotonous checkbox activity. And you're going through those lists and you're looking for risks, but they're the very immediate, obvious doomsday tomorrow type of risks. And the reality is you need everybody working together so that they have this holistic view. They're able to connect the dots and identify the underlying risks in the transactions.
Like the Monsanto Roundup lawsuits.
That aren't so obvious. So that's absolutely. Because those things, you got to look what's unobvious.
So it's a collaboration issue in your mind. And your software, I imagine, helps along that.
It's funny. It's not that complicated. What we provide is very similar to other project management tools. We just tailored it for the nature of M&A with the whole security aspect of it and just keeping the confidentiality, especially if there's certain documents are highly sensitive. But the collaboration piece is where we do is to create an environment where as you're finding things, you're sharing it with your teammates. You're not just waiting for a weekly meeting to show up with memos when everybody's focused on what they're going to tell the group and nobody's really listening to each other.
Right.
Here you're using these tools to share information, share findings in real time, get this conversation going, so you're having much more productive meetings.
Have you heard of like Monday.com or Asana?
Absolutely.
It's kind of like that, based for M&A. Very M&A specific.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then after you close on the deal, and if it's a company in a situation where they need to integrate it, it even gets more complex. And I've done enough of these talks where you ask the audience about M&A, and I love asking them just to describe the emotions. Say, well, what emotions do you automatically think of in M&A? And a lot of them are on the receiving end where, we got acquired and it just disrupted things. People got laid off. It was frustration.
Negative emotions.
We had to change all our processes.
So a lot of negative emotions when you ask people about M&A.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's your point with that? Like the software may be able to alleviate some of that?
It's the integration part's very complicated.
Right.
And that's where things can go wrong. That's where things get distracted. A lot of those goals of driving value get lost, the big picture of doing the deal. And I think that's another piece of it, is if you can improve collaboration there as well, but also just have a nice process set up that's continuous. Some of these companies will have one team doing diligence, a completely separate team doing integration, and there's so much planning required to be able to do that really well.
Yeah. Okay, so going back a step. So it's akin to a marriage. That's how we can think about it, and it can bring up a lot of emotions because you're trying to have a baby, and you're trying to build a family, and you're trying to make shit work and integrate. And let me tell you, I'm on my second marriage right now. It ain't easy integrating. You know what I'm saying?
It's a culture fit, right? You got to have like common things and be able to really get along and like each other.
Relate. And when there's conflict, be able to kick that ball back and forth and throw it back and forth, as opposed to just like whipping it at someone.
Yeah.
So that's M&A. And do you believe... All right, so let's talk about some M&A deals like that you look at in the market sometimes. What is the best reason in your mind to do an M&A transaction? What is the best reason in your mind for one company to buy another company for billions of dollars?
It depends on the strategy. It really depends. I mean, the big talk now...
I'm asking you, what do you think is the best strategy? Is there one clear cut one?
Depends on the company. Some of these companies have old lines of businesses, or their portfolio has businesses that their business models are becoming irrelevant.
Yeah.
You got a print company and
print paper. Yeah, it's like, why are you still operating? But they still have business.
And that's where you're thinking about that business model is getting to become completely irrelevant. What are you going to do to counter that? What are you going to invest in to be the next growing thing?
So this is the disruption thing.
It's disrupting. I mean, we're seeing economies being built like Uber and Airbnb just out of nowhere.
Right.
So it's if you can get ahead and find something that's really going to increase your capabilities and find something that's growing and thriving. I think that's where you can get your best returns. I mean, for Facebook to buy Instagram, that was a clear-cut winner.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fantastic move. It's kind of like what we talked about with Amazon buying Zappos, but on a way bigger scale with way more synergy. What do you think makes the Facebook Instagram mergers so powerful?
They caught that business model at the right time. People were sticker shocked because they were a small 14-person team.
Instagram?
Yeah, when they got acquired.
Is that all 14 people?
Really small.
How much did Facebook? Do you know Facebook owns Instagram, right, John?
Yeah, I know that.
How much do you remember how much Facebook paid for Instagram?
It was around $1 billion, somewhere around
$1 billion. How much do you think that business honestly is worth right now?
I think last I heard it was getting right around $100 billion.
$100 billion. Instagram's worth $100 billion. Honestly, that might be low.
Yeah.
That might be low. I mean, everybody's
turning on to it, so it's
people are leaving Facebook by drove in the millions.
But they preserve themselves really well by doing that deal.
Totally.
So I think anything where you do that, it's just you're able to survive and thrive.
So you think that Facebook was so in tune with the social media world that they sensed they need to purchase Instagram because social media is about to pivot in a way where that may be the future?
Maybe. Or they just were looking at, here's a business with a lot of potential based on what we see from it. And we definitely need to get ahead of it. But it is big. It is big, especially in that tech sector, to get ahead of these trends.
WhatsApp is similar.
Very similar.
Though that one I see, it's not clear to me how they make any money from WhatsApp.
Yeah, it seems like they.
That's where they need Libra, the cryptocurrency. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Where they got to start allowing payments to happen over WhatsApp, and they'll start rolling in freaking Zucker dollars.
Yeah.
And then they will start to disrupt all of banking, and everyone will just use Facebook the way the Chinese use WeChat.
Yep.
And goodbye banks. Facebook is trying to do to banks what they did to newspaper publishers.
That's true.
Crazy ass shit. That's where I see WhatsApp and Instagram, but more WhatsApp, being just bonkers with some sort of cryptocurrency.
That's true. They got some good strategies.
Okay, so one of the top strategies you see is basically what we're talking about is synergies and able to ramp and scale a business that wouldn't otherwise be able to scale.
Well, there's transforming your business model because you can pick up revenue completely different. Big thing is subscriptions. Everybody loves subscriptions right now. Those
Meaning
are high
you buy a
valuations.
business for the purpose of gaining subscriptions?
In our industry, our legacy providers, the virtual data rooms, a lot of them are billing per page. So, hey, here's a deal. We're going to bill you per page. And those bills could escalate in the tens of thousands easily. I mean, back in the old days, they'd get $1 million even just because you're billing.
Manage the data room.
Yep, because it's just a vault for document storage. That now, providers like us, we're coming in with pure SaaS models. They're much more cost effective. We're providing a better set of features. We're very much tailored to the customer, company culture wise. People in our company know M&A. I spend the time to teach them so they understand how the process works, understand these clients' pain points and challenge, and be able to have that consultative nature when they do work with them and make sure they're adding value on more points than just providing a software.
Right.
And that's the thing that's changing. We're giving a whole different client experience, and that's disrupting some of these companies. So they need to rethink about their business model and how they're going to compete with the young and up and coming companies because all these industries, this disruption pace is just continuously increasing. It's not decreasing.
Wow.
So that's a big driver. And then there's scale. I mean, there's some of the companies, we have several that we work with that just roll up. The dental industry is a big one that's been consolidated. A lot of the specialized healthcare clinics where they're becoming chains. The ATI physical therapies are
I've seen those.
acquired, roll them up, put them in the same brand. We have Caliber Collision that we work with.
Caliber Collision?
Yep.
Is that an auto collision?
Abra. And it's always, they have radio ads that are announcing their rebranding, but they ABRA. So they merged with Caliber, and they've now the largest auto body.
Oh, no shit.
Company in North America.
No shit. I mean, what are they called?
Caliber Collision.
Caliber. They went under that brand.
Dallas based. Yeah. And then Secure America. We got security agencies. There's a couple that we work with that they're rolling up in that space. So that's another one because the more you acquire and get the volume, your valuation just goes up.
Of course. Yeah.
So different place.
Totally different place. Yeah, I see that. I see the difference clearly now as you describe it. On the smaller side, like the ATI physical therapy or the Caliber Collision, versus the larger Xerox, HP, or Monsanto Bayer, or Zappos, or Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah. Then there's pure financial engineering too. So
where they kind of fudge the numbers.
No, it's just hey, what's this company worth public, and if we take it private and change some things around, and you restructure it a bit, and there's just different operational restructuring and things you can do there.
Yeah, where you can actually, it's almost. I mean, would you say it's similar to what you had intended to do with the methadone clinic? Is that like where you buy it, make it a little bit more efficient? Would you consider that financial engineering?
Yeah.
That's more operational efficiencies.
To a degree. There's ones different. Where the businesses, the sums of the parts are worth more.
Yes.
So we've seen some of those.
Or vice versa, where the parts individually are worth more.
Yep.
Yeah. M&A, baby. John, do you feel like you understand M&A a little better?
Slightly more.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even know it existed before this podcast.
John's right. He's going to go to the bar next door.
Talk some M&A, right?
Yeah.
So you fucks
really
with that.
Woo the women.
Yeah, they're going to be all over you.
Yeah.
They're going to think you have money, so they're going to totally get you laid for that reason.
Yeah, that's a good way to get me laid, finally.
Just talking about it. Like, hey, have you heard about the Facebook Instagram merger? Let me tell you some shit.
Mm-hmm.
Hook you up. Kison, awesome to have you on here, man.
Hey, great
Thank you
being
very
here.
much, brother. That's another episode in the bag. Thanks for being here, JD.
Hey, no problem.
Thank God Chris left early.
Yeah, thank Christ.
Peace out, y'all. Thanks for listening in.